mean good news for Novak Djokovic coming in to the US Open. How are you anyway, mate?
Yeah, very good. I mean, we did want to do a podcast about all of the stuff happening in Canada. Maybe we'll squeeze one in tonight or tomorrow. We're going to try and cover some finals for that to bring you some matches. This one's just talking about, obviously, the upcoming, impending US Open. There's not long to go at all. I mean, it's a matter of weeks now. I'm quite excited for it. We know Rafael Nadal seems to be making his way back, playing Cincinnati first, and then he's going to be there. Daniel Medvedev as well. He won it last year. He's looking like he can play. They're not going to be banning any Russian players. But the one player who we all really want to see is Novak Djokovic play because there's a lot at stake. He's just won Wimbledon. He's trying to now tie up the Grand Slam race. And there's very encouraging news coming out. And I like what you've done with all the visuals, by the way. It's a cool thumbnail and all the hope for Djokovic sort of opening up to the heavens. Are they going to open up for him? Only time's going to tell. But the way all this news is coming out, I would be very encouraged as a Djokovic fan that he is going to be able to play in the US. And that is probably not the most popular opinion from what I've seen on Twitter, from what I'm seeing in the live chat, and what I've seen across the news platforms and other people speaking, is that they still think it's going to be very difficult for them to budge on the rules and they're going to just not allow him still. But I don't think they've really got a leg to stand on in doing that.
No, I agree. I think this new news that they're changing the regulations and the guidance. We've got Mark in there saying, I'm a Djokovic fan, but still don't think he'll play, sadly. I think the change to travel will happen after the US Open and maybe in September. Well, you could be right. I just feel that announcing it before the US Open, though, and then not allowing him to play, considering they did allow him to play last year at the peak of the whole pandemic, I just think it's just ridiculous, to be honest. I think Australia, we knew it was a bit of a crazy time still at that point with all of the new variant and everything coming out. And we knew how their hardline policy was over there. In the US, it's been flicking up and down. We don't know what's going on. They sort of changing their policy willy-nilly. And Djokovic not being allowed in, for me, I think it's a travesty. He's just won Wimbledon.
Yeah, the worst part about it all, Ben, is this just seems to be something that's going to be a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
If they don't let him play at the US Open, and let me just clarify, them not letting him play at the US Open is not him actually going to the event. It's getting into the country. Once he's in the country, they've got no problem with him playing any of the events. It's just him getting in, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. So if they don't allow him to play, and then all of a sudden, oh, the US Open's kicked off like a week after the first week of the US Open. Oh, everyone's allowed now. For me, that just sucks. And it's like, I don't know. What are they achieving from doing that? For a start, this raises a lot of questions. Are they doing it on purpose? Do they have a vendetta against him? Do they not want him to be there? Is there higher powers sort of saying, you know what, it'd be better if you just delay this an extra week. We don't want Djokovic to be there. You could open up a can of worms with all these conspiracy theories. And I'm not suggesting that for any minute, but it's certainly something that does cross my mind.
Definitely,
because it's getting to the level where it is so petty and so political that there's no scientific evidence going into what they're doing, that if they've changed all of the rules, just let him play. And let's get up some more scientific and factual writings on this rather than us bickering about it. But we've got Clay Traffy saying, how can Djokovic be banned from playing in the US Open when the CDC just announced there is now no longer any difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated? He should be able to play, period. And exactly. I was watching an interview with Clay Travis just before we started this, talking to a news anchor in America. And they were speaking about how they treat patients now with COVID. And in the past, before this announcement from the CDC, they treated patients with COVID. No, they treated vaccinated patients in a different way to patients who hadn't been vaccinated. But now, since the guidance, they treat everyone the same.
And I think it's crazy. I know it's now that they've brought out this new announcement. Somebody put this into perspective. Somebody who's vaccinated, who has COVID, can get into America before Novak Djokovic if he doesn't have it and unvaccinated. I mean, for me, that's ridiculous. But you allow someone with the disease to travel just because they've been vaccinated, but you won't allow someone without the disease who has already had it as well. He's already has the antibodies, that type of thing. And that's been proven to be pretty much nearly as good as the vaccination. So I just feel like it makes me question, is there something, are they just making a point that, oh, you didn't want the vaccine, so we're now just not going to let you in, just out of principle, because you've just gone against everything? We just want to make an example of you again. It just seems I don't like it at all.
Well, it
I
seems
think,
like that will be the case, especially if they lift the rules and allow people to come in unvaccinated a week after or something,
oh,
which it seems like it could happen. Let's go through some of the others because this is
yeah.
quite an interesting one. So this is just reiterating the CDC guidelines have been revised and COVID rules have been relaxed. The new guidance lifts the requirement to quarantine if exposed to the virus, de-emphasizes screening people with no symptoms, and updates COVID-19 protocols in schools. Just our take from across the pond in the UK at the moment. The way it is for us is, I believe we don't have to quarantine either. I mean, if I have
No.
COVID right now, I
Yeah.
don't have to declare it to anyone. I'm allowed to go to work. I'm allowed to get on the train. I don't think that's been the case. It's been the same as, it's not been like that in America, has it recently? But it
No.
seems to have, now they've moved to the way we have it in the UK. Is that
Yeah, they're
is that
behind.
correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They just seem to be behind everybody else on everything at the moment. I don't know why, but they just seem to have taken a very long time to like make the transition between all of the like the the relaxing of rules and stuff. Whereas in Europe, yeah, it got relaxed a long time ago. I didn't
Yeah, but I don't know if it's
anyway.
all Europe. I'm not sure about that. Let us know from other places if you're from sort of Germany, Italy, France, Spain. But
Well,
in the UK, certainly, it's been. I think the UK have actually done quite well considering. Like they've
yeah.
actually relaxed everything a lot sooner than all the other countries, and I'm not sure. They must have had some scientific information to be able to do that. They can't just do it on a whim. But let's just keep going through this because there's some more interesting points here.
We got Kathy saying that they still have to quarantine if positive in the US, but you would still be allowed to travel though. So you could travel, then quarantine, and then come in. Ultimately, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
it's not like it is here.
no,
The update isn't a huge overhaul of the existing guidance, but it does represent an increasing focus on individuals making their own decisions about their level of risk and how they want to mitigate that risk, said
yeah,
Dr. Marcus Pleshisha, Chief Medical Officer of the ASTHO.
wow. I mean, that's
So
the sort of
it's more based on the individuals now
yeah.
making their own decisions.
I think that's the way that you've sort of got to play things like this. We've been through the worst of it. Everybody who wanted to get vaccinated has been vaccinated now. That was for the safety of the people. If you were one of the people who chose not to get vaccinated, you can't hold off until everybody gets vaccinated. Eventually you have to let people go back to their lives. If people chose not to get vaccinated and that was their decision, that's just the way you have to play it. And then, unfortunately, if something bad happens, that was just on them. And the world has to keep moving forward, unfortunately. And they did everything they could within their power to vaccinate as many people as possible. And they rolled it out pretty quickly, or as quickly as they could. And now, time to get back to normal, or as normal as you can get these days.
Yeah, for sure. We've got Freya who lives in Poland. So just confirming what you said about Europe. It's the same in Poland. You don't need to quarantine anymore. Just to echo what I said a second ago, in the UK at the moment, if I catch COVID, I can just get on with my life in the normal way. I don't have to alter anything. It comes down to the person to have your own responsibility. Do you quarantine in them circumstances or not? But legally, you're able to do what you want. Seems like the US are now allowing individuals to make more decisions, which isn't going to be enforced by law. The big question I've got from this is in the US specifically, there was a lot of people who lost their jobs.
Yeah.
They lost their jobs because they refused to get the vaccine. If they're say if someone's lost their job a few months ago because they wasn't getting the vaccine, or it most likely happened a bit some time ago, should they then now not be offered that job back, considering that they've done a whole U-turn on all of that, and no longer it's now essential that you have to be, and it's down to the individual. Shouldn't people who lost their jobs because for not taking the
I think
shot
so.
get their jobs back?
Yeah. Oh, and they should be compensated for all of the money they lost, really. Like, they wasn't their choice to lose their job. Like, they got kicked out of their jobs. It's the same with all of these things when you have policy changes like this and people suffer for years based upon a policy that gets brought in. Like another one, which is quite a big one in America at the moment as well, which there's still people locked up in prison for offenses that are no longer offenses anymore. And that's like possession of marijuana, stuff like that. That can be people are locked up in prison because of that. And now it's legal. So how do you justify keeping them in prison?
Yeah,
That's the thing. Like, it's a bit backwards.
I've seen that, actually. That's interesting. I'm glad you said that, because that is the perfect example of things. People who are locked away in prison because of marijuana, whether that was just sort of them taking small amounts of it or whatever.
Just found with it on them, possession or
just
something.
Possession, not even just use. And yet now it's legal. So it doesn't really make sense. It seems a bit like this now, though, doesn't it? Because it's not really been the best guidance then.
Well, you locked them away for 2 years, and now they don't even have a job. So you took their job away from them, essentially restricted their ability to earn money, which you could argue is the same for Novak Djokovic. You're restricting him from doing his job, which is earning him his money. He probably has bills like the next person. I know this is obviously a big exaggeration. He has sponsors. He has loads of money. He can probably cover it. But if he didn't, and his only job was just tennis, he doesn't get to earn any money. And you've got to look at it in that perspective. That's his job. He enjoys doing it, obviously. And I'm sure most people would want to see him all around the world. Tennis fans would want Novak Djokovic at the US Open. And there's just people preventing him. It's very flimsy right now what they're doing to prevent him from playing.
We've got Dutch Ian saying, here in Alberta, Canada, the restrictions are lifted. And if you catch COVID, you are not on the mandatory isolation. So that's in Canada.
That's big, because Canada have been one of the real policed nations as well, where it's been very, very harshly locked down. And yeah, a lot of the restrictions in Canada, if they've changed it in Canada, that surely should say something. If Canada have even managed to do it, what's going on in the US? I mean, is it?
Well, no, they are
Joe?
doing it, Ben. No,
is he in charge?
No, they are doing it in the US as well, but it's just a case of if it's going to be in time for Novak Djokovic. Right now, for people tuning in, you've come to watch the video. Hope for Novak Djokovic. I think I'm going to make a statement. I think he's going to play the US Open. I really do. I'm not sure if they're going to be. I just don't know how much justification they can do to sort of prevent him from playing when all of the new guidance and evidence supports him being allowed to play, if in a matter of days after the US Open, or if not a little bit before. It's going to be happening very soon. So why not just let him play the start of the tournament? He is a big ambassador to the US Open, the USTA. He is someone who's won the event. He's a contender. He's a favorite. He's going to sell tickets. He is a sports icon. He's going for so much history. It will make it a bigger, greater, better spectacle for America. The world want to see the best players playing at these events. Doesn't make sense to stop him playing. Just going through the bullet points, we've got those exposed to the virus are no longer required to quarantine. We spoke about that. Unvaccinated people now have the same guidance as vaccinated people. Students can stay in class after being exposed to the virus, and it's no longer recommended to screen those without symptoms.
Yeah, exactly. I think that if you were to say, I just feel like it's just so ridiculous, this whole scenario. The fact that this could be just one person. I mean, maybe the petition may help him as well in this. Maybe if everybody just, gave him an option to say, like, you can travel, but you have to isolate yourself away from everybody else, and all the players in the competition just have to sign to say they allow you in the competition. They're the only people you'll be in contact with. Do that then, or do something that will give him the ability to just keep out the way of everyone else. If that's what it'd be, he would do that. I fully believe if he could.
Would other players? That's a bit of a silly thing you're saying, because would other players sign something to want Novak Djokovic there? If it's your career, so they're going to be making more money the further they go in the event. Why would you want one of the best players in the world to play?
I don't know.
If I'm Carreño Busta,
probably sign
if
it.
I'm Carreño Busta, would I sign something to say I would like Novak Djokovic to play at the US Open? Of course I wouldn't.
Well, maybe he thinks he.
So I don't know what point you're really getting.
Maybe he thinks he could beat him. I don't know. Maybe these players will stick up for each other.
You're not going to want more competition. The players themselves, I don't think they want more competition at the US Open. They just want to be able to win it. That's the whole point. Djokovic being there doesn't help them. So I don't understand what you're trying to make.
The Players Council, does that not stand for anything these days? Players don't back each other.
To a level, I'm sure, but ultimately the players want to win, and Novak Djokovic not being there will give them all a better chance of winning.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, maybe just tennis fans, maybe the Americans need to have some sort of
it shouldn't be down to the players anyway. It should be down to the policy makers and the people who are making the decisions to not allow him to play because he's unvaccinated. They need to ultimately make the call, and then if they allow it, he's allowed to play. It's not down to anyone else then.
Yeah. They are the people in charge, and they need to make a decision as soon as possible. I really, really do.
Yeah, you got Gene saying the players will never sign a petition. I mean, there has been a lot of love for Novak Djokovic from across the world. I don't know how many signatures that petition's got now, but I know there was quite a few. The other time I checked,
40 or 50,000 when I checked.
I feel like it's gone past 100, but
probably, for sure. But yeah, I think that there would be some that would sign if there were players. I know that you say no one. Probably the people who weren't as competitive in the competition would be more likely to sign. I think someone like Kyrgios would probably sign out of purpose just so that his name was at the top of the list. So he's saying, I'm backing him again. I'm mates with Djokovic, this type of thing. I think you'd get people like that signing it.
You got Kathy making a good point, saying there was an article saying 93% of Americans have some level of immunity through vaccination or having had COVID. This is the reason for the rule change. So just to reiterate, me and Ben, we are both vaccinated. We're both in favor of getting the vaccine. When it was at the peak of COVID and everyone was sort of advised to get the vaccine, I'm strongly in favor of getting it. And that's why we went out and got our vaccines, because we know that was the only way we'll be able to return to normal. Novak Djokovic, on the other hand, decided not to take the vaccine. So could you then argue the fact that because he chose to make that decision, they're a bit bitter and angry towards him, that everyone did something, and he was basically put his middle finger up to the world and said, I'm not doing it. I'm looking after myself. I don't care about it. Ultimately, it's against my own personal beliefs and my body. I don't want to put that inside it without knowing the risks. And because of that, he made that strong stance, and they're going to make him pay for it. And they're going to just be as difficult as possible in they're not going to be very accommodating to him in any way.
Well, yeah.
And if they can delay it by 5 days, they'll do it just to spite him. It's a bit like what's happening with Brexit in the UK, because England or the United Kingdom, they left Europe from doing that. Now, have you noticed how difficult everything else is? So you've got people in France, in Calais, across the border, making sort of the lorry drivers, all the waiting. They're making it more difficult because they're against us leaving the EU to begin with. It seems to be a bit like that as well.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that.
It's a bit of a principle thing, I feel.
I feel like it could be.
Very stubborn.
The trouble is, he's already wound up like a lot of people over the course of the Australia thing. I mean, he was plastered all over TV, stole the limelight from the tournament before it was beginning, really. And there was a lot of players obviously speaking out about Djokovic back then. I'm sure those players probably haven't changed their views. They probably still think, why did I have to get it and he doesn't have to get it and he gets to play, that type of thing. There's going to be those type of people everywhere. And maybe they think it's just desserts, really. If Djokovic doesn't get to play, like we all had to do something, why do you get to not do it and you still get to play? Like that is a view. I can understand that view as well,
Yeah, I
because
get
it's
it.
not fair. It
No.
isn't fair. But like you were saying, if you get told you have to do something to be able to go back to normal, and then you don't do it, you don't get to go back to normal. Like that was why
If
everyone got it.
everyone took Djokovic's stance, we'd still be in. I mean, there'd still be probably be about 1 million people dying a day. I mean, it would be terrible. I don't know.
Possibly.
I don't want to say
Don't
numbers
know.
because I
I
don't
don't
know.
know if that's
But
true, but
but if not, okay. So you're telling me if no one took the vaccine, we'd be in a good position right now today.
I don't think they would allow anyone to do anything. That's the thing. They'd try and keep.
Mate, it
They'd
would be
keep trying to get.
awful. It would be awful. All hell would break loose if nobody took it.
We don't know though. I mean, it would
Oh, come
break loose
on,
because
Ben.
it broke loose
Oh, what
anyway.
do you mean you don't know? So you're telling me now, if not everyone took the vaccine, we wouldn't be in the peak of COVID. It would be the worst it's ever been. It would be spiraling out of control. What are you talking about?
Or it'd be on like variant 4 or 5, and then people who survived it would just be survival of the fittest, wouldn't it? That's what I mean. Like
Right.
all of those things, it would just be like survival of people who get
We
it
got
or
Kathy
don't
saying
get
if
it.
there wasn't a vaccine, we'd be still in the MIPS. I would say it's
Probably
worse
would
than
be.
that. I'd say it
Probably.
would be worse than the peak we'd ever have had. It would have been terrible. So this is
It's
why
hard
I
to
can
it's
understand. I
hard
can
to know.
understand
It's
both
like
sides of this story
it's
because
an unknown though. That's the thing. Like we don't know because we're never going to go to that stage. I mean, I still sort of see it from both sides. I would always get the vaccine because I believe that that's the thing to do to get rid of it the quickest. I still don't know if anybody didn't get vaccinated, if what the damage would have been, or if it would have been really severe, or if it would have still just been like 95% of people just recover. Like I don't know. Like that's the thing. That's the
no,
honest truth.
I
So
think like Kathy's hit the nail on the head. The health systems would have collapsed. It would have been complete chaos, and I'd dread to think what it would look like. It would have
yeah,
been like
I've
a
dread to.
war. It would have been like a
I
war
well, we
situation.
already
That's how
had no, we
drastic.
had well, as soon as it cleared up, there was a war.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't really. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. There's always going to be another thing which is going to come along to surpass it. And as soon as COVID died out, a war suddenly erupted. It's just there's always one thing after the next.
Yeah, let's
Like
move
now
on
we
to
got
the next one.
monkeypox is the next thing, isn't it?
We've got James Melville here saying the US Centre for Disease Control has basically stated that the unvaccinated now have the same guidance as the vaccinated. So why on earth is Novak Djokovic still banned from competing in
Yeah,
US tennis events? And that is the
no
big one.
idea.
Why is he not allowed to play? You've got unvaccinated people now, the same guidance as vaccinated people, and it's just highlighted this. If no longer recommended to screen those without symptoms. So, yeah, this is the big
That's
point, though.
strange, isn't it, mate? Unvaccinated people now have the same guidance as vaccinated people. How can you stop him coming in? I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if he goes down the legal route to try and get in, or if he just. I'm not sure. I don't know the ins and outs and the policies and how it would work and him fighting this system. Um, and what do you know exactly what is now needed for him to be allowed to go? He just needs the all clear
Yeah.
from who?
These need to be implemented. I think it needs to be like what do they say in America? They've got like the federal government or something, and they have just like the states as well. So they need the federal government, I believe it is, to agree on all of this. Once that's agreed, then he can probably come in.
We've got another one here saying with the CDC's updated recommendations, does that mean Djokovic can play at the US Open? Well, it's currently no. that's the top and
Currently,
bottom of
no,
it.
yeah.
Currently no, but I honestly think he is going to play. I have a real good feeling that he's going to play. Right now, I'd have to say 70% he'll play, 30% he won't.
I hope so. At the moment, I'm still not as far as you with 70. For me, it's in the balance with like a 50-50. I think that they could try and screw him still. I don't know. I don't think it's quite right. The fact he played last year,
It would be wrong and it would be bitter, but then they're well within their right to do that because Djokovic, by not taking the vaccine, he puts himself at their peril.
Why was he allowed to play last year?
It's a good question.
That's what I want to know. Like, how do you allow him in during the peak of the
It was a lot
pandemic?
worse last year, and he
Yeah,
played. Got all the way
yeah,
to the final.
that's what I mean. And
They brought fans in as well for the final.
I know it just doesn't. It for me, that's one of the biggest parts of it all. Is you allowed him in during the worst part. Now it's not as bad, and you won't let him in. It just don't know. There's something weird going on.
We got
I don't
rowdy
know.
every lap, and I found out what the CDC updates were about, and there is nothing about removing the vaccination requirement for non-US citizens entering the country. Because that's another interesting point. If you
Non-US.
are, so Tennis Sangren, he's American, he's not had the vaccine, he's allowed to play.
Yes. Interesting.
Yeah.
God, it's a can of worms.
It is a can of worms. And as Rowdy every lap saying, it doesn't really relate to him. So we'll just read it again. I found out what the CDC updates were about, and there's nothing about removing the vaccination requirements for non-US citizens. But you'd have to say, following this new guidance update, the next logical step is to update the fact that now non-US citizens are allowed to enter the country, irrelevant to your vaccination status. I mean, that is the next step. It's not that's what we're talking about here, because that's not been announced yet. But this next step is going to be imminent, surely.
Yeah.
Probably after day two US Open. After they've done the draw, it's going to come through.
Don't say that. It's just I can see it already. You can imagine him smashing a TV somewhere when he sees the news coming through. I just don't want to have that. Come on, be fair and announce it. Don't announce it during the tournament if you're going to do it.
It's going to be done after the draw. That's my prediction.
No. Oh, don't, please don't. I can't stand it. Yeah, we got
Adam Brooks here. I'll let you read out.
Where's Adam Brooks? Sorry.
It's on the screen.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant in the live chat. We got Adam Brooks here saying, considering the recent CDC government guidance and statements, the fact Djokovic cannot play the US Open is truly politically motivated farce. Embarrassing, apparently. I think a lot of people will have this same view as well. The same people that had the view from Australia, which I think the Australia one is not so cut and well, it was sort of cut and dry in the end, but when he was first coming in, wasn't so cut and dry. At the end of the day, they had to make a stance based upon like a backlash from their own people. This one, there isn't really the same. There's not. I don't know what it's like in America. I don't think it's the same backlash that he'll be receiving if he was to play this tournament. So them not allowing him in, I don't think that there would be the same sort of, you're not going to have the whole of America against the government, I don't think, if Djokovic was to come and play the US Open.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Whereas in Australia, you saw what happened. They were going to let him in, and then they were like, everybody, it was like the riot squad were out just to try and prevent all of these people just who are coming out in their droves with all the billboards and everything. You just need that. It's like anarchy in your own country, and you're just allowing it to happen. This, I don't think there's going to be probably going to be one person at the airport with a sign saying "Djokovic, go home." So
let's go to the last one, because I know you're quite interested by this one.
Yeah,
this is a Ben request. This tweet.
This is my favorite one. It says, "This is from Professor Freedom as well." I like the name. It's a great name. Saying, "Hey Djokovic, why don't you just enter the US via the Bahamas to play in the US Open? There are so many people who would love to see you there. Cheers." And if you scroll down, it says here, currently no COVID test or vaccination required to enter Florida when traveling by ferry. So is there a little loophole here that Djokovic could be on his way by ferry? He's there with a few like grandmas and just on the deck.
I mean, this is valid, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if that's a legitimate
like,
way
if he wants to play the US Open, if he goes to the Bahamas, but can he get to the Bahamas to begin
Well,
with.
that's the question I was going to ask. Is he allowed to travel to the
Yeah,
Bahamas?
you can
We
only get
don't
to
have
Bahamas
that.
if you're vaccinated.
Yeah,
Maybe. I don't
exactly.
know.
It's totally.
But that's quite funny that he could potentially, if he got to the Bahamas, he can get to the ferry then to New York and then he can play.
There must be like
Or
some
just to the
way.
US.
Imagine that's how you see him. There's like a little. He does a vlog over on the ferry. Djokovic is
Well, there's another
travel.
way as well. And I'm glad someone said it in the live chat because I don't have a tweet for it. And that is Amir Mesba saying Novak just needs to fly to Mexico and walk across the border. If he goes to do that, he can do that if he wants to as well.
Why not?
I don't know how easy it is to get across the
I
border,
don't
but
know either. It doesn't sound like him. I don't know. Would he be more likely to be let through than anybody else?
because
Probably not.
basically it's this, as Kathy says, he could come in through Mexico too because the restrictions specify arriving by air. So as long as he comes from ferry or
Come on,
walks across, he's fine.
please do one of those two, please. I would. I don't know. I don't want to make his
So he
life
can actually
difficult.
walk across because if he's walking across the Mexican border, that's fine.
If there is a video of him walking across from Mexico,
I
it's
mean, if he
gonna.
was to do it, you'd expect Ivanisevic there to be with a camera, just
I'd
watching
expect a
it. It'd be
massive film. It'd be a film crew. That's the thing. There's all
everyone
these.
cheering as he walks across. I can just
Yeah,
picture
but
it now.
but then you've got the other negative backlash from that as well. There's
There'll
all
be
these other.
protesters there, like absolutely hating on him.
Oh yeah, but
Probably.
there's Mexicans they don't want coming, and if he just gets allowed in, they were like, "Hey, welcome Novak," and they're
He comes
chucking
on with a
Mexican
sombrero on,
some maracas,
and then just throws it off.
Da, 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 da,
I'm
da.
here.
Imagine comes across on the ferry. God, mate, I as much as I don't want to make Djokovic's life more difficult than it already is, if he could take one of those routes to the US
Well, we
Open
can.
so that we can just have video footage of it, I just want to see him on the news traveling in to America by one of these like methods of transport.
Mate, as Tanya says, he better do it properly and legally though, because he doesn't want another hanging. I mean, imagine if he was to do
Yeah.
one of these routes and it was deemed illegal in any way. He's not signed something, or there was an issue, and then we find ourselves in another courtroom in the US this time because he crossed the border without signing or dotting this line or whatever.
Oh,
That would
he
just be
needs to
something
sign
else,
his
wouldn't
own
it?
forms this time. He needs to not let those people. Oh, I didn't tick that box somehow. Oh, it's just been announced. Novak Djokovic is going to swim to across the ocean. Imagine. There could be
Shout
some
out
quite
to
funny
Rowdy
memes
Every
coming
Lap
out.
for the
Oh,
super
cheers,
chat.
Rowdy.
Saying, I hope Novak's plays so he can watch Rafa 23 and Rafa raising his 5th US Open trophy to tie Federer's total. I mean,
Ooh.
if Djokovic is to play, Ben, is he favourite to win the whole thing?
I don't think so. I feel that Medvedev might be for some reason. I don't know. It just depends how he plays in Cincinnati, Medvedev. But maybe.
Why not Kyrgios? Kyrgios has beat Medvedev.
Well, Kyrgios.
Just
I think
blitzed him.
I think it's really interesting at the moment. This is another reason I want Djokovic there, is because Rafa, if he has a good Cincinnati, it's going to be amazing because we're going to have Rafa full guns blazing going into the US Open. Imagine Medvedev gets deep in that tournament, gets to the final or something as well. We could have two amazing players who have both been, well, both US Open champions from the past going there, the reigning champion in form. Kyrgios, imagine he makes or goes deep again. He's been playing so well anyway, he can beat him. And if Djokovic comes in as well, Buster, make sure JG's probably going to be a dark horse for the US Open. I can see it already. I'm not going to take it from you.
Well, I mean, I've been singing his praise before he kept doing this mad run. I told you guys he's going to be doing it. 2-time semi-finalist US Open. He loves playing on these American hard courts this time of year. He's going to be a threat. He could easily win this event in Toronto as well because he's playing really well, beating some top players. He's one you have to consider. Carlos Alcaraz, bit of an unknown entity, did well at the US Open in his first year. I remember he beat Tsitsipas. I'm really excited. The US Open is going to be a great event this year. It would be better to have Novak Djokovic there. I am edging on the side that he's going to be allowed to play. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a little bit delusional. It's not the popular consensus Most people thinking there's no chance for him. Even his coach said the other day, 0 chance. But since these rule changes and a few of these regulations moving around, I just have an inclination that he's going to play. And I mean, if he really wants to, he can just go by ferry from the Bahamas or fly to Mexico, walk across, or drive. As long as it's not in the air, he's fine. So he can't get a helicopter.
Yeah, true.
The helicopter's off.
Imagine he puts his foot down. He's like, no, I only want to travel through the air into the. Well, he might be stubborn as well. You got to realize that he might be making a stand to say, why should I have to travel in another way? If he does that, though, then if you're not going to use everything within your disposal to get to the tournament, I just think it would just be like a bit of a middle finger up if he travels in through like another means. And I quite like it that if he does get there and just disregards the fact you can't travel in by air and manages to get there on foot, that would be brilliant. I would love that.
We've got Tanya supporting me, saying, I'm with you, JG, agreeing with what I said. Lexi's in. How are we doing, Lexi? Good to see you. It's been a while. We've got Scorpion Cricket Tennis News saying, I'm a big fan of Novak Djokovic since 2011. Please allow him to play. It's unfair with him to not allow him if he's fit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what we've said.
Yeah,
any others?
really...
We've got Marlene as well saying Djokovic lost to Vesely means very little as it was his first tournament after the deportation from Australia.
Don't read into that. Just won Wimbledon, by the way, just in case anyone forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one coming off the back of winning Wimbledon as well.
Exactly. I feel that it would be annoying if he doesn't get a warm-up tournament, but he didn't have a warm-up tournament for Wimbledon, and you see he does just fine without that. He sort of uses the first few rounds to warm up, and just as long as he doesn't get someone like Kyrgios in the first round or something, or second round, that's the danger. Kyrgios being in and around outside seeds is just a nightmare for all of those top players. But for him, he doesn't really care, does he? Kyrgios will just be anywhere in the draw. He'll just keep on plodding through, serving his way to victory. But obviously did lose to Hurkacz recently. Hurkacz will be playing Casper Ruud. That will be coming up later on the channel. Make sure to join us for that match. Anything left to say on Novak Djokovic and his hope for the US Open?
Well, I hope that he can play. That's all I want to say. Right now, just to clarify for people if they're just watching the end, Novak Djokovic is not allowed to fly to the US Open. He's not allowed to play. That could be subject to change. It seems like it could change just after the US Open starts. There is a possibility it happens before. There is other ways he can enter the US if he wants to. Let's wait and see. I think we're going to have a better answer towards the end of this week. But I'm hoping he can play. And I am a little bit more optimistic when this news broke yesterday.
Yeah, we've gone from zero hope to some hope. That's
what is your hope? Mine's 70.
I'm 50.
50-50 for you.
Yeah, definitely. Down the middle. Don't trust these governments.
Fair enough. I think we'll wrap it up there. Last thing to say is join us for some of the Canadian events. Unfortunately, I know someone said earlier we've not covered as many as we would have hoped to, and that has purely been because of the time zone. A lot of the big matches start at 3 a.m. in the UK, and with work, we've maxed out all of our holiday towards the start of the year, and we physically don't have any more holidays. We used a lot during sort of Roland Garros and also during the Australian Open time. So it's very difficult for us to cover as many matches as we would have wanted to. But we can assure you, US Open, we've got a few days in the tank where we're going to just do as much as possible. And another thing to say, on the women's side, I forget where they are. It's not Montreal, it's the other one. Toronto, is it?
Yeah.
The women are in Toronto this year. I told you all about Hadid Maya. I did tell you in the draw preview, and look how good she's playing.
She is playing very, very well. You also said Halep doesn't do too well. She's had storm in it. But you never know with Halep. I
also had Ostapenko in my final, and she went out. So
yeah, she didn't do too bad, though. She was all right. But it's the way it can go. We've got a big, obviously, tournament coming up next week. We're going to be doing some draw previews tomorrow night for Cincinnati, the Masters. Obviously, the big news, we've got Serena Williams. She's back for her penultimate tournament. Can she go deep You have to join us and find out what we think.
Exactly. Cheers, Mark. And we'll see you guys very soon.
See you guys.
Make sure you like and subscribe as well.
Definitely do that.